Okay, so we're going to go over the program area in the DMX workspace. That's this area over here to the left. And in these layers of the program area, that relates to this section down here. So right now this says global, we're on global, and down here this is the global program, okay? And the global program is tied to exposure 1, which if we go over here in the cinematography workspace, we could see we have X1. Okay, so those two things are connected. And you'll see there's this little line connecting X1 to global, and that's a parenting system. So we have a system within DragonFrame where you can have exposures and programs parented in all kinds of different layers to create basically a work area that you could come up with some pretty creative things to do with. We also have a program called the Bash Light. The Bash Light is for animators, and I'll show you how that works. If I click on the Bash Light, what you'll see is that our program looks the same down here. It's got the same keyframes, we have the same names of lights, same channels, but it says global over the top, and it's all sort of blued out. These buttons right here, this line right here, is the parenting on and off switch, okay? And the Bash Light is parented to global, and we've separated the Bash Light because it really represents something different. It represents the lighting for the video feed when you're shooting your animation. So if we go all the way over to our animation window, this video feed can have its own separate lighting. So let's say this was our shot, and the animator said, well, it's a little too dark, I need more light. Okay, well, we're not just going to change the lighting of our fun dramatic shot for the animator. What we do is we go into DMX and we go to the Bash Light and we say, okay, how about we add another light? Now I happen to have a light already set up here in the room, and it's on channel 4 of my dimmer, so I'm going to add it right there, and it came in as 4 because I'm a 2, 3, 4. And now, I got to detach that from the global, and I'm just going to pick it up a little bit. And maybe the animator said, you know what, I don't need that red light on for my animation. It's kind of messing me up. I will just say most of the time what animators want is the exact lighting that they're shooting in, but just brighter. But in this case, we'll just kind of get dramatic with this, and we'll also turn off the red light there. Okay, so now, actually, I'm just going to go ahead and move the light a little bit closer because I can in this case. All right, so if we look at what this appears like in the animation window, we see that the background got darker. It's like, okay, what's going on there? Well, if we look at our scene, it's programmed to start very dark on that backlight. So what we can do while we're in the Bash Light, unparent this light and turn it up to where we think it's good for the animator. So maybe something like that. So now we'll go back into our main window. To really shoot a frame, we have to say ready to capture, and this will synchronize all of the DMX programming with your frames. It also will synchronize motion control as well. So now if I shoot the frame, what we'll see is that it captured the video. If I step back and look at the video, there's the video there and there's the video now. But if I go to look at the high-res frames, you'll see that's the lighting for the high-res frames. So the animator gets their own Bash Light, and we just programmed a Bash Light. Okay, now we have this X1. Let's go ahead and, we got to get out of ready to capture. Let's go ahead and we'll click on global to see what that lighting looks like. We've got this little bit of animation of the lighting. But what if we wanted to have a matte on this hand created by a backlight? I don't have a separate light set up right now for this, but what we could do is go into the cinematography workspace, add another exposure, and why don't we go ahead and we'll name this BL for backlight. Now that's not going to change anything other than just give those frames that name. So there we have BL. Now when we go back into the DMX workspace, we see that there's a BL and it's parented to the global along with X1. Okay, so we can just go ahead and detach this really from the global. Now you see there's nothing programmed on it. And we'll take this backlight and we'll pump it up to what we think could possibly make a nice bright backlight. Okay, and because it has its own exposure, and we could even brighten it up a little bit more to get a nice blown out look. So now our X1 exposure, our main exposure, and our backlight are separate from each other. Shoot a test shot to see how that looks. And so now we have what it's going to look like lit and what it's going to look like as a backlight. And this could work as a nice mat. So back in the DMX workspace and in the program area, we've got our global, which comes in automatically. We have our first exposure, and then we've pulled apart the second exposure, so it's kind of on its own. But you could also work on a program that's not attached to anything, maybe an idea that you have for lighting. And then, so let's say we create a new one, and we'll just call this test. And test program will start like that, and then maybe this comes up and this comes up a little bit. So again, hit play. And if you thought that this was something cool, but you didn't want to commit it yet, and maybe you just wanted to show it to someone or just to think about it, you could just create a program that's by itself, and then you could take your X1 and parent it to the test, and now your exposure 1 is going to do that program.